Today we have El Presidente, the ICCFA President Lee. What's going on today? How are you? Give us that rundown. Where you come from? How did you get to where you are in leadership at ICCFA? Higher up at SEI, has a lot of experience from his family's firm growing up and then into the corporate side of things. A lot to learn here from Lee today. So what's going on?
Well, Michael, first, thanks for having me on the podcast. I do appreciate giving us a little time to talk about the ICCFA.
Sure.
My background, I grew up as an independent son of an independent funeral home owner. So I was digging graves at 10 and helping dad with removals. And my dad's funeral home was one of those places where he did 60 calls a year. And when he turned the light on, the whole staff had reported to duty.
Yeah.
He stood every visitation, embalmed everybody, made every removal, and stood every funeral, and for 45 years till he sold it about 6 years ago, October. And my mother,
well deserved.
Yeah, and my mother had the only flower shop in town, so it was just a family affair there.
Good combo.
In 1986, I graduated from high school, and my dad said, "Go work for one of those big outfits up in Dallas," which was about 25 miles from my hometown. And I went there to work for Stewart Enterprises during mortuary school, apprenticeship, getting my licenses, and then worked there basically until I got out of grad school in 1994, and was going to go into consulting work. And a longtime friend of my family's, my dad dug his graves in Plano Mutual Cemetery. Ted Dickey Funeral Homes had just sold to SCI and asked me to come open a funeral home with him in North Dallas. And I did that, and I've been with SCI for 30 years.
Wow, incredible. So you've had quite the, I guess, experience going from, your dad's firm, 60 calls, doing everything himself, to SCI, the corporate style, very different. What do you think are the biggest differences between the two as far as day-to-day life? Is it like as a funeral director? And then I'd like to talk about more big picture things that we could all learn from so we can get to be one of those bigger call firms. I think it'd be really valuable for our funeral home owners listening.
I really think the from a funeral director perspective, there's we're serving families. I mean, we're serving families, and SCI being an operating company, and as a funeral director, I spent some time embalming. I spent some time working, with families and meeting with families and handling services, and there's really not a lot of difference, in that aspect of the business. I think where SCI and an independent is a little different is the resources we have. The resources we have as a company are incredible. And I think Bob Waltrip, who I'd known for 20 some odd years before he passed away, was an incredible visionary to our organization and to a lot of independents that needed a succession plan as well.
Absolutely. It's key. It gives people that option, if one of the family members doesn't want to take over, or you're kind of your back's against the wall. And as we know, funeral directors, we work so hard, especially our independent ones that are doing things like your dad, every single aspect of the business. It's hard to find a way out. And then, SCI offers you that route if that's the scenario you want to go through. When you were going through in mortuary school and grad school, did your dad ever considered you, after you're done finishing all that stuff,
I
you're
didn't want to
coming
go
this
back.
way?
I didn't want to go back.
You didn't? Oh,
Now,
damn.
I see myself as a 50-year-old man washing a hearse for an 11
Yeah.
o'clock service,
Yeah.
'Cause he was not one to wanting to, and he's still alive today and still lives in the same town, but he wasn't one to give up the controls. There was a time I worked at the funeral home for him. I took vacation, and he would, I went on one family vacation my entire childhood, and I have younger siblings, and he took the family on vacation, and the former owner's wife died at the funeral home that he bought the funeral home from in 1975. And her son came in to make arrangements. My dad was all over, oh, you do this. Do you know where this is? I go, Dad, I got this. I've been here my whole life. I know exactly where everything is.
Sure.
And he kept calling. He said he was going to get on a flight from Orlando and come home. And her son got on the phone and said, my family never took a vacation. And if you come home, I'm taking my mother to another funeral home. And that put the brakes on that. He didn't stop calling me, but he didn't come home. So we handled it just fine.
Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, I can relate so much to that situation. I come from a family funeral home myself, and I saw it with my dad as well, just working, grinding every single day, never a break, never a vacation or a day off. You don't know if he's going to be working in the evenings or during the day. And it was just hard to see that. And, I think just like you, Lee, like I have that inner calling. I want to be in this industry. I want to be a funeral director, but I want to do it a little bit differently than my father did. And I think just like your father, I'm sure mine very much respects the decisions to go on a broader scale, to do things different, but at the same time you're still helping people and helping families, which is where that comes from within a little bit more.
Yeah, I didn't always agree with, I learned a lot by, over time about how to look at things differently in our profession, how to do things differently in our
Yeah.
profession. But one thing that doesn't change is the innate desire to serve people in their most
Mhm.
vulnerable time. And watching
Yeah.
my dad in this small town, it wasn't just during a vulnerable time. People could call him for anything, and he was service ready, service ready. A man called his horse died and wanted his horse buried in his pasture. My dad took the backhoe out there and buried the horse, whatever. And over the years that he served, in 2021, he got an elementary school named after him, literally
No
because of service
kidding.
to the community. And what a great, long time honor to have that. And so it was quite an honor to stand with him during that.
Wow, good for him. So what is it like for him now, just getting retired after all these years? What does he do to occupy himself? I'm sure he's got to be doing something. And how was that relief for him afterwards, or did it never set in?
Well, what was funny, he kind of set out for about a year, and
An hour.
he went. It probably to him it felt like
Yep.
but he went to work for Laurel and Dallas with SCI as a service director because he just needed something to do, which was funny. That's where I started my career, was at Laurel
Ah,
and Dallas, and he was closing his career out. And he's had some health problems where he's been out of the game for a little bit, but getting back on his feet now. But he's still the guys he sold the funeral home to. They've done a great job with the business, expanded it to another town. But if they have somebody calls him and said, "I want you to embalm my husband or my wife," he goes down there and he pulls it
wow.
together and does it. Still serving the community.
Good for him. That's fantastic. And what a testament to him, having the school named after him and people still wanting him after all this time. It's got to be just such a good feeling, and that's part of why we do what we do, is
That's
because
exactly
we
right.
know we make that difference, and you could tell with things like that.
That's for sure.
So I guess we could talk about the business side of things a little bit more. So in comparison to those independent, I know you touched on it. It's the resources. I'd like you to expand a little bit more onto that. And what are some things maybe some smaller firms could use to learn from and say, hey, this is things that we could do on a day-to-day basis that would expand our horizon or our reach in our communities.
Well, Michael, I think, and this has been my testament for a long time. And if you talk to anybody that works for me, they're going to tell you this.
Mhm.
Anybody that I work for, they're going to tell you this because I'm a clanging cymbal a little bit. And it's also my platform in the ICCFA. We have a serious problem going on in our profession, and that's the direct
Okay.
cremation consumer.
Okay.
Uh, this consumer is a consumer that I think personally we blew off in the past.
Mhm.
I can remember in the 70s, and I can remember as a young funeral director in the 80s, you
Sure.
were trained that, you're going to go in and basically take an order and process the person. And there wasn't much to it because we were bearing the greatest generation at that point in time, right? We were bearing all these
Right.
World War II, my grandparents' era.
Mhm.
And now we look and cremation rates in my world are 54, 55%.
Mhm.
Um, True at need, there's running around 63%. I just heard the Cana executive director at the ICCFA University that, 2035 or 2040, I forget the time period, they're going to be upwards close to 90, 95%.
Yeah.
And if we don't figure out a way to have that customer celebrate with us,
Yeah.
then we're going to become a commodity. And
Mhm.
a commodity is not good. And I look around our profession. I'm around a lot of young funeral directors. My kids are even in our business, and a
Oh, no
couple
kidding.
of them. And the thing I want it to be as a great of a profession and a great of a place that I got, you got, and the
Yeah.
people for us got, right. And
Yeah.
if we don't figure out a way to how to combat this problem, and it's even a stronger problem on the cemetery side, because a standalone funeral home will get a direct cremation and the customer doesn't believe they have a need for a cemetery. But
Right.
Michael, there should be a place in this world that says I existed, right? And
Mhm.
on the funeral home side, you don't lose someone you love and not celebrate their existence.
Right.
They're just not doing it with us for several reasons. One, they don't think we have the capacity.
Mhm.
I sat in an ICCFA university class, the hospitality school, just this past July, and listening, and the instructor said, "How many of you think hospitality or catering is critical to our profession?" And every one of them raised their hand. And
Mhm.
there's probably 25, 30 students in this class.
Mhm.
And how many of you are doing it? Like two or three raised their hand.
God.
And one of the three said, "Well, we'll do it when they ask." Well, of course we will. We're funeral directors. If a family asks for something,
That's part of the
break our
part for the
back to
course.
try to do it for them, right? But to do it as a sense of this is something we're doing every day to make it convenient, because the days of the little ladies from the church coming and setting
Yeah.
up in fellowship hall, those ladies are all working. The women today are not at home where they can provide potato salad and ham casserole. They're
Mhm.
working in the workforce and raising children, and so there's just that it's not there. So it's a great opportunity for us. And the other thing I think is
Yeah.
is our independence and corporate alike. It really doesn't matter, because it's the same issue. Obviously there's people that say, independence this or corporate's that or whatever. But
Yeah.
we have common issues that are crushing this profession that we could all come together and work together on to really make this profession a strong, viable entity for the next generation and for the opportunity to serve the community the way our predecessors did.
Absolutely.
And one of the things, something we did in our group in 2010, we got rid of all the rows of chairs and pews, and we put
Mhm.
in round tables, and we invested a little money in our facilities so it was more bright and vibrant and not dark and sad and depressing.
I did
And
those same things. Yeah.
we did this, and we didn't really have hard. We had some families go, "Oh, we prefer the rows of chairs and that kind of thing," and we'd flip the room, but we made the rooms flexible. Um, you know, all the
Smart.
way up to where in 4 years ago, I put a 1920 speakeasy in my funeral home in Tampa. I put a wine
That's
room in my
cool.
funeral home in DC and in Naples, and making it an atmosphere that's very celebratory, very upbeat. Instead of, you'll remember this, Michael, growing up in the business, that, people walk in and hear Merle Womack,
Yes.
singing in quartet, and be sad and depressing and heavy.
Sure.
And I tell our folks all the time, people walk in with the weight of the world on their shoulders,
Mhm.
and we can't make them sadder, but man, we've sure tried, right? Because of the atmosphere. And what our job should be is to lift these people up. Tell us why you're going to miss this person you loved and lost. And they will spew so much information about that individual where you can create a unique celebration. Instead of doing the mundane every day, 3 points, two songs, or depending on the religion, you now
Mhm.
have a blank canvas to help tell their story one
Yeah.
final time in this incredible event. And if we can get to that point and show people what's possible, then I do believe with everything in me, we can change to where we become the experts of celebrating an individual's life, and not the restaurant, the hotel, the country club down the street.
Yeah, that's all of that is so well said and right on point. Couldn't agree with you more on all of it. We need to be the focal point, the experts in what these individuals are trying to do. Because it's not going to, the days of us holding on, which, happened to probably the best of us, hold on that it said, oh, it's just a trend or a fad that's way, way behind us. So now it's far more about how do we adapt and adjust and make ourselves valuable to the families? How can we bring them something that can't be done elsewhere, or do something for them that is going to stand apart and say, I'm using that funeral home or I'm using that service for no matter what family member I have, or someone attending a service, same thing. And it's just about giving those families opportunities and options to do as they please, because every service can be different. Like you said, Lee, a blank canvas is such a great way to put it. And families, they want to talk about their loved one. They want you to understand more of them. And if we just listen a little and then say, hey, I can do the tiniest little thing, it could take 5 minutes out of your day to go above and beyond, maybe order something special for the family, or put something in the chapel or wherever you're having your service for the family that is about their loved one, and they know it's from you. You don't even need to do it for the credit, but they're going to see it. And that's the thing they're going to remember more than anything, is that you went above and beyond. And then beyond that, you have people coming in from the outside saying, oh, I got so much value from this place. They're doing things for me that I want to do. They're memorializing my person, my loved one, in the way that I want it to be done. That's where the value is coming from. And we need to get back to providing that value and not just plugging along and, hoping for the best and hoping for changes. What you talked about with the students saying everyone raise their hands, it's just like, come on, like, why are we doing these things then? Well, what do you think it is? Like, well, what is it that is going to finally, hey, let's go. We got to make these changes. We got to improve.
It takes relentless leadership at the
Yeah.
owner level or the manager level. Because if I could give you $1 for every time I heard a funeral director say, well, I know my families and my families don't want me. Right.
Oh,
and you would be a gazillionaire. And the hardest, getting a funeral director to move away from tradition is kind of like pushing a rope uphill.
Yeah.
It takes relentless leadership. And not only, and I'm not talking about beating them over the head. I'm talking, say, as a young manager, when I wanted to do something different, I said, I'll take the next family. Let me show you. And we've got people now that are doing it every single day, and they can't even fathom going back to 3 points and 2 songs. Mm-hmm. They can't. And the other thing, I think a manager, or how we got to round tables and how we did this and how we convinced the funeral director to open their mind to that as a way to open community within the business, is I always relate it back that I'm not reinventing the wheel. We're not suggesting reinventing the wheel. What we're saying is, what did our predecessors do to get us to where we are, right? Mm-hmm. And what they did is they followed the church. Now, I've got some funny theories about how we got there. But at the end of the day, we follow the church. And in a lot of places, we've got pews and pulpits and organs. We've got everything but the choir loft and baptistry, right? We've got church inside our facilities. And my thing is today is, let's do the same thing. Let's look at the church. The church that we modeled after is dying. It is dying at a rapid pace. However, you can go, you're in Chicago, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Willow Creek Church in Chicago. You familiar with Willow Creek?
I don't think so. It sounds familiar, but I'm not
sure. Big contemporary church. I've been up there several times. It's actually kind of one of the founders of the contemporary movement. It was a Presbyterian church that became very modern contemporary. Mm-hmm. But nonetheless, if you read studies on these churches, that yes, they had corporate worship, but they also had an intentional way of bringing people into small groups or sitting in circles, hence the round tables. So let's put people in small groups. Even if I don't know you and I'm sitting at a table and we're here to celebrate Mr. Jones, we have a connection to Mr. Jones. And instead of listening to sad music playing and reading the prayer card, we're actually talking about Mr. Jones and how he impacted our life and how you knew him. And so the room is filled with robust dialogue, honoring and celebrating Mr. Jones. The other thing is they're a lot more comfortable, right? The contemporary church is more comfortable. It's more of a come as you are kind of thing.
Right.
Many families that walk in our door to make arrangements, they walk in shorts and flip-flops, or, jeans and boots, or depending on your region, but they come casual. And we historically meet them with a black suit and a red tie and a white shirt. And, we're very transactional in our appearance. And they're already coming in with some misconceptions about our great profession. But we kind of contribute to that because of the way we look. And we made a change, again, it was around 2010, where we let some folks dial back their attire. I can remember, you probably can too. If you walked into the lobby without your jacket on, you could get written up. It was serious business. We had a mirror.
I would not have liked that. Actually, my dad was a little bit more lax with that, but my uncles would get you.
Right.
Oh, if I came in there without a tie on or my jacket, woof.
Right. But when we dialed it back, and it was actually on the coast of Florida, they wanted to go to Tommy Bahamas in slacks. And I said, let's try it. That's what they do in Hawaii, and they're on the coast, and people
Yeah.
walk in shorts and flip flops, right? We not had a single complaint. And in the
Sure.
process of making a customer comfortable, our average went up without even a price increase. And the
Mhm.
theory behind that is the fact that when you're underdressed in a formal environment, all you want to do is get out of there. You've probably been in a situation where they didn't tell you the dress code, and you walk into something you thought was
Yeah.
jeans, and now it's black tie or suit and tie, and you feel awkward, right?
I just went to a wedding 2 weeks ago and I didn't realize it was formal. So I came in, I was wearing a suit but no tie, and I was like, I can't wait for the dance floor for people to start taking their ties off so I can fit back in.
But that's the environment. And once we
Yeah.
brought it down and made it comfortable,
Yeah.
then we met the customer where they are. And
Mm.
that's exactly what our profession needs to do, is meet the customer where they are.
Mhm.
Again, we play at the contemporary church. We don't play, hymns out of the hymn book, right? We got bands and playing upbeat music. Well, you know
Mhm.
what? We brightened up our music. We started depending regionally. We said, here would be a great place for the Eagles. In
Yeah.
South Florida, Jimmy Buffett is
Yeah.
potentially a good music to play when they walk in. Make
Sure.
the atmosphere uplifting, upbeat, and it's okay to smile when they walk in and greet them, with energy and passion, and
Mhm.
dispel what they've seen, because the customer knows what they don't want, and they've only known what they've seen us do. And
Mhm.
until our facilities are set up and shaped in a way that dispels that belief of what they've seen, and they see that we have evolved into something way different,
Right.
then once we accomplish that, then we can make the change for sure.
That's cool. I love that. I think it's huge, and it's addressing the customer's wants, desires, and bringing it all together and making it more of a conducive atmosphere to help out. That's really great, and I think a lot of us can take bits and pieces that use it in your hometown, your area, whatever your shtick is or your niche is, and use that to your advantage for sure. How do you like it, and what is it like to manage so many funeral homes? Give us your rundown of your day to day life, with SCI now, and what is it that you're doing to try to implement some of these things?
Well, let's start with the last first. Implemented is a constant thing. I mean,
I'm sure.
we started catering in 2005 in Orlando, Florida for SCI.
Mhm.
So we've been doing it close to 20 years now, and
Nice.
we sell a lot of catering. A
Sure.
lot of catering. We'll do about $15 million of food and beverage a year, just in my group. That's just my group.
I mean,
Uh,
think about that, everyone. My gosh, opportunities. We got to
and
use them. Yeah.
and I'm a fraction of SCI, right? My
Right.
my world is about 300 locations, cemetery and funeral out of 2,000.
Yeah.
So so that gives you the opportunity is there to do that, and we just kept evolving, and it was an ideas that would come from sitting in a meeting, like the attire one came from general manager in East Florida, that said, why do we
Mhm.
wear suit and ties when everybody's coming in dressed like this? They don't even wear suits to funerals. So it's a
Yep.
good question. Let's try it. And we tried a lot of stuff, and some things stuck and some things didn't. But
Sure.
today it stuck. We work diligently to change our nomenclature. We don't use the terms chapel anymore, memorial service. We don't use any of those things. Everything's focused around a celebration of life. And if someone wants something traditional, well, Lord knows we're good at that, right?
Yeah.
We're outstanding at going back.
Yeah. We
But
can we can figure that out. No problem for you.
but the thing we found with the nomenclature is, when you start talking about venue and catering and floral and linen colors and all these kind of things, well, there's typically a female sitting in that arrangement office who's planned their daughter's bridal shower and wedding and their own wedding and anniversary parties and birthday parties. Now
Sure.
they understand that lingo, right? And when you start talking that lingo, they begin to prop up, because, you know,
Yeah.
and the greatest phrase a family can tell us is, I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know
Mm.
you could do that. So there are funeral directors and funeral homeowners that are sitting on this podcast, or will be listening to this podcast,
Mm.
that are saying, oh, my families don't want that. He probably lost his mind. The
Yeah.
families don't want that. But I just recently went and looked at a building in Florida, to convert to a funeral home or a celebration of life center, as we tend to call them. And it's a restaurant. And its restaurant's been in business for 35 some odd years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still a running restaurant. And while we were in there, the general manager looked at me and said, "What do you do?" I said, "We're in the funeral cemetery business." He goes, "Oh, really?" He said, "I do celebrations here all the time." I go, "Really?" I go, "How many do you do?" He said, 10 to 20 a month. 10 to 20 a month. So you cap that out. That's 240 call a year funeral home right there. And I said, "So what are you getting on those out of curiosity?" He says, "I'm getting $9,500 pop on average."
How is he
And
getting those coming in?
well, some of it's nostalgia. Some of it is the funeral provider doesn't have the ability to do things different within the marketplace. Some use a direct disposer, which they don't have the ability to offer anything, and so as I said at the beginning of our podcast, you don't lose someone you love and not celebrate their existence.
Yeah.
And so these people look for a place to celebrate, and and so I'm sitting here thinking, that's our business. That's what we do. And we have abdicated it for the customer. And here's my belief, Michael, is in the 70s and 80s, when we kind of just let the cremation customer be an order, and we just took the order and we processed it. We were dealing with people making decisions for their parents who are baby boomers today, who the families we're going to be serving.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's true about the baby boomers is that if they couldn't find what they wanted, they answered their questions for themselves, right? And that's in all aspects of the cremation process. If you look at, we didn't offer them a celebration. We were like, "Oh, you're going to cremate, so that's just what you're going to do," right? And we let it go, and we processed the order. And we sure didn't talk about a place that I existed, a cemetery, piece of cemetery property or anything like that. So what did they do? They did one or two things. They bought an urn and put it on their mantle, or they took them and they scattered them somewhere of importance to the family. And
Yeah,
the
exactly.
scattering's only remembered for one generation.
Yeah.
And the whole urn on the mantle thing, I think, is a beautiful thing and a testament to the relationship of the person you loved and lost, that you want to
Sure.
remember them each day and walk by them each day. But at the end of the day, they're not generational gifts, and they will
Right.
end up in the most unintended places, as you well know, if
Definitely.
we don't let them know what the consequences are. And that's where I think we have let families down historically, is
Mm.
not telling them everything that can happen. And maybe in the 70s we didn't know, but we sure know now that
Yeah.
dad could end up in a box at Goodwill, could end up in the attic of the house to the next owner to find. There are so many things. And to boot, life goes on. Maybe mom remarries. Maybe she gets a boyfriend and moves that urn somewhere else, and then it ends up getting forgotten.
Yeah.
And
That's
that's
tough.
not what she intended when she took it home.
Right. Right. So we have to educate and give them opportunities to express, to memorialize, to do all that, to celebrate more so, as you were saying. Give me a rundown of what's going on now with ICCFA. I know you're heavily involved. You're the president over there. What are some of the great things that you're doing, and events and such that are coming up that some funeral directors might want to get involved in?
Well, I tell you, ICCFA has struggled a little bit, like all associations, especially post COVID. Attendance is
Sure.
slightly down and things, and it's kind of the same thing as a profession, right?
Hmm.
When you look at the associations, and I've traveled to a lot of them so far this year. They're less people, and it's the same show. And so what the ICCFA is doing for the next annual that we put on, and of course, historically, it's been called the ICCFA Convention and Expo. We're going to be at the Mandalay Bay, April 30th through May 3rd in Las Vegas. But we're,
Nice.
we're, we're literally changing the whole thing up. It's going to be called the ICCFA Experience.
I saw
Uh,
that. Yeah.
it is going to be incredible. We're going to have speakers that are giving information and a lot of roundtable discussions or panel discussions where people can ask questions. Our goal is this ICCFA experience in Vegas is for people to get information that they can take back. And if they have the courage to go implement it, it can impact positively their business, both
Yeah.
cemetery and funeral home. Not feel good. A lot of these functions, you got three topics these days. You got to talk on leadership, you got to talk on managing the millennial, and you got to talk on AI. That's all well and good. If you're just doing direct cremations, none of that really matters if we look fast forward into the future. So we really want people to walk away with stuff that, you know what, I can try that. That wouldn't take a lot to implement. I can go do this and give it a go. But it goes back to every talk's going to have why. Why do we need to do this? The why behind everything, because you can't accomplish the end goal if you don't know why you're trying to run down the field, right? Yep. So it's going to start with the why, and hopefully people will ask good questions. We're going to have some of the foremost in our profession be a part of that and be a part of those panels and speaking and then taking questions. It's going to be a real festival kind of atmosphere. Yeah. All the stages are going to be inside the hall. So we'll have a major keynote stage. We're going to have smaller stages throughout where there'll be little 20, 30-minute, 40-minute discussions. So I think it's going to be a really, really different and exciting type of experience to kind of disrupt what we've always done.
That's great. And I think you're hitting it on the head, is to revamp those things and do it in a new, bigger, better way that we can use moving forward, as opposed to holding on to what we did in the past or talking things that aren't going to apply to the vast majority of people, especially in the next 5 or 10 years. So we want to just thank you so much for taking the time. Honestly, I learned a lot from you today, and I think a lot of our listeners can too. And I think if you want to be on the forefront of things, digest what we talked about today and expand your horizons. Go check out these events like ICCFA in Vegas here and do those things that you can improve your funeral home, and just really take what Lee said here today and, chew on it for a second and see what you can come up with yourself to apply to your funeral home. I think you'll get a lot out of it.
And Michael, can I say just a few short things right quickly?
Of course.
And that is the ICCFA has smaller events as well. We have the Fall Leadership Conference, which is coming up in San Antonio in October. Oh, cool. We have the ICCFA University, which I attended the entire week this year, and it is by far one of the most educational, progressive, professional educational things that students can get. Wow. We have our TED Talks in Vegas in February, where it's more sales oriented, so you can bring your salespeople. But we'd love to have more involvement. We've got our Journey to Serve partnered with the NFDA Foundation and the ICCFA Foundation that pulls together to try to place veterans after their services. So that's great for our country. So check out ICCFA. The main thing, one of the biggest things ICCFA does is legislative and legal stuff. And, we got the FTC funeral rule changes. We got the non-compete rule, which was just knocked down, but doesn't mean it's gone. We got the junk fee rule, which are big things. So these are some things that the ICCFA is very involved in and focused on. And frankly, in some of them leading the charge for our profession.
That's great. So if someone wants to get more involved, what do you recommend them doing, or typically starting out with to get involved with ICCFA and dip their toe in?
Well, go explore, first of all, ICCFA.com. You can go there and see all the different events. You can see pictures of past events. You see the upcoming events. But the Fall Leadership's in San Antonio, and it's going to be a great conference. We have an annual golf tournament every year, plus good networking, good educational program. We got the Ritz-Carlton that's doing a session for us there. So, service matters even today with this customer and as well as in the past, and no one does it better than the Ritz. And so there's a lot of opportunity. Dead Talk is phenomenal. I think people with a sales organization, or even a few salespeople, to have them engaged. And of course, the conference, the experience is going to be incredible in Vegas. And so anybody can reach out to me via email through the ICCFA office, or lee.longino@dignitymemorial.com, and I'll be glad to guide them where they need to go.
Well, we appreciate you for sharing that information with us, and for sharing your contact in case someone wants to learn more, get involved with you. I think there's a lot of people that could stand to learn a lot from you and your experience, and the same thing with your organization.
Michael, I sure appreciate your time. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, sir.